I've been here before. Over and over again, and each time the same question. Is this it? Will this time be the one?
The Old Guard is a new big Netflix action tentpole movie that gives us a group of sort of vampire John Wicks who John Wick their way through swarms of bad guys in the modern day. And much to my pleasant surprise, pretty successfully so. The reception to it was mostly positive, and even though it didn't have to worry about theater box office, it did seem to interest people at home. Overall, in a world dominated by material opposite of original, I would call this film a beacon of hope. And the reason I say much to my surprise is because The Old Guard shares quite a few similarities with one other recent film that wasn't received so well, one that didn't garner much interest from anyone, one Gemini Man. And what are these similarities exactly? Well, for one, they were produced by the same people. And even more than that, the cores are the exact same. We have badass, inhumanly capable heroes who travel around the globe fighting an evil corporation in a way that would make John Wick either proud or litigious. But more general similarities aside, there is one connection between these two films that ties them together more than anything else: their use of concept. In that both of these movies offer a conceptual promise that makes them special, an intriguing original idea that makes them more than just yet another generic action movie. And yes, I know The Old Guard isn't exactly original, but at this point, if it ain't Marvel or Star Wars or some other massive corporate property, I am willing to give it that. In Gemini Man, the concept was essentially old versus new. We have an aging has-been soldier who becomes hunted by a clone version of his younger peak self. An incredible concept. But like I mentioned in my video, the issue was that at some point in the decades-long development process, the filmmakers just kind of forgot about the concept altogether and created something that didn't utilize it the way it should have, which made it into yet another very generic action movie. In The Old Guard, where we have a bunch of undying sort of vampires, the concept can be stated with just one word: immortality. And the difference is, this time the producers had learned their lesson and actually stuck to it. This concept is what they made this whole movie. In terms of what it is, in terms of what it does, as well as in terms of how it says whatever it is that it has to say. And so, since we talked about the negative side, I thought it'd be useful to analyze the positive side as well. How to actually succeed at concept. If you are in the process of writing your own next big original concept-heavy movie that you don't want to become just another generic actioner, here's a couple things to keep in mind. The first issue with Gemini Man was that it doesn't introduce its concept until after the first act. When they finally do intro the clone, it's awesome. They handle it like Jaws in that they hide him as much as possible to make him as scary as possible, and overall, it's very freaking effective. But before this, we have to sit through 35 minutes of some of the most excruciatingly generic, boring CIA corporation stuff that has nothing to do with clones or old versus new, which means that by the time we actually get to it, most audiences have already either zoned out or checked out. And it's the same case with the beginning of The Old Guard. The opening here is basically just your usual average born copycat stuff, and to be honest, I was bored out of my mind. I was preparing to turn this movie off and do a video on something else. Until 12 minutes in,
oh shit!
That's right, as the inciting incident, the movie shows our heroes getting blown into oblivion, only to then have them stand right back up into the fight in a way that would make even Captain America proud.
Walk it off.
Meaning, this movie makes it clear right away that it isn't just some generic born copycat, but that it has a reason for you to be watching, and it gives you that reason from the bat. And with me, for example, it did the job. I was right back in it, because now I knew that what I was watching wasn't just another generic generic action movie, but instead something different and special. And even though you could say this is all pretty obvious, you'd be surprised how easy it is to fall into the trap of excessive lead-up. Here, you could have very easily kept the immortality aspect as a mystery that you built up to through the entire first act. You could have very easily had the girl not fully discover what she is until the midpoint escalation. But the thing is, most of the time these concepts already get spoiled by the marketing team before the movie even comes out, so there's really nothing worthy of 60 or even 30 minutes of build-up. So why not just establish the status quo norm of the world and characters and then immediately give the audience what they came for? If you have a movie about mind heists, maybe just show the audience that the opening has been a mind heist all along. If you have a movie about a deadly younger clone, maybe just have the inciting incident show that deadly younger clone attacking instead of these generic SWATs you can find in any other movie. Or if you have a movie where a young soldier finds out she's an immortal sort of vampire, maybe just cut to it.
No! Medic! Man down! No! Stay with me! Oh my...
Like I've said before, we live in an age of ADHD. Attention spans are getting shorter by the minute and shorter than a minute. And so whatever cool premise it is that you promise, people will not and should not even have to wait 30 minutes to get to it. If you have a great new original concept that makes your movie special, just give it to the audience and give it to them fast. And maybe, just maybe, they'll stick around, mentally as well as physically. The next big problem with Gemini Man was that it doesn't utilize its concept to do things only this specific concept allows it to do. See, the old versus new angle here allows for a very specific movie where we have an old tired has-been having to use his old school knowledge and methods to take on his physically peaking, ruthless younger self who utilizes the latest modern gear and tactics. That's what this movie can do that most other movies can't do. That's what makes it special. But ultimately, all that we got was two equally matched badasses using the same gear and methods for a very even-sided battle. And as cool as that can be, it's not special, it's not anything we can't find in other generic movies. However, if the producers did learn anything from Gemini Man going into the Old Guard, it's this. Because the stuff that the Old Guard does, the events and interactions and plot beats it features, pretty much only it can. See, since the concept here is about immortality and this group of warriors who cannot die, what do you think is the main activity that the movie practices? Well, it plays with death, and it does it quite a bit.
How bad is it?
It's an improvement.
In how many movies can you see the hero die at the beginning and then just walk it off? In how many movies can you see a mentor teach the pupil a lesson by blowing their brains out? In how many movies can you see a young soldier be put down like a dog only for them to keep fighting regardless? Not too many. But you can see that in here, because that's what this specific concept allows for. Now obviously at this point nothing is truly original anymore. Here for example you can draw similarities to Live Die Repeat and how that plays with death in a similar comical way. But I'd argue that there is still enough difference in execution here to distinguish these two films from each other. And even if not, I'd still choose to be compared to this one very specific great movie instead of every generic action movie ever made. But that said, there is one big potential weakness to doing what your specific concept allows for. The fact that you kind of unintentionally condition the audience to view everything that happens only from the point of view of that concept. For example, since this movie due to its concept builds up death as a no big deal, death itself kinda starts losing its potency, and we begin to know to anticipate it, that death is always the outcome. But now that the movie knows this weakness, it then takes it and turns it into a strength by playing with our established anticipations in form of very effective reversals. Like is the case here, when our hero Andy has been tied up by the girl on a plane and then in response kills their human pilot, because they can just die in the crash and walk it off.
We can jump and survive.
I am not jumping from a plane.
I can fly a plane.
But then...
You don't speak Russian, do you?
Why?
Because I told the pilot to play dead.
As another example, since death is a no big deal, it by definition also diminishes the stakes. If our heroes can't die, why should we care when they face off against enemies? Well, again, now that the movie knows this weakness, it manages to turn it into a strength by switching the stakes up. Just before we get into the action scene of the bad guy storming our hero's home, we are shown this. There you go. Once we see Andy's old friend get locked into an underwater coffin where she drowns again and again for the end of time, we know exactly what is at stake. If our heroes lose the battle, they don't just die, they will be captured and they will suffer until the day they die, which, as we know, is pretty much never. And while I can't speak for you, I personally would choose death over eternal drowning any day of the week. And stakes like this we can get mostly only here. A main plot about a pharmaceutical CEO striving to turn our hero's immortality into a commercial vaccine we can get mostly only here. All the things that the Old Guard does we can get mostly only in the Old Guard. And that's what sets it apart. That's what makes it special. Thirdly, the concept of Gemini Man allowed it to explore a very specific thematic question it would be truly about, the thing we can remember it for. Like, since we have a normal human going against an inhuman clone, you could explore the differences between them as well as the answer as to which one truly is superior.
I don't want to shoot you!
Fine. Don't shoot me. Mind if I shoot you?
But that's not what the movie did, because the filmmakers were so obsessed with making the clone as technologically advanced as possible that he ultimately ended up becoming more human than our human hero, which is why the whole conceptual theme of humanity versus inhumanity got lost in translation and the movie at the end of the day didn't say anything about anything in any way, just like so many other forgettable generic action flicks. But then here comes the Old Guard, not only to succeed where Gemini Man failed, but to succeed in a very special way. All that this movie explores, all that it has to say and propose, it's all built exclusively on our concept of immortality. Obviously, again, what this movie explores isn't anything new, because at this point pretty much everything has already been cinematically explored somewhere. But what it is able to do is explore it in a way that hasn't necessarily been done before. Basically, the concept of immortality here allows us to inspect humanity across time and how humanity changes, or rather how it doesn't change. Like I touched on before, back in the day humans used to be pretty close-minded. If something or someone was even a bit different, they would hang them and burn them until death, and if that didn't work, lock them up in an underwater coffin to suffer forever, simply because they feared difference. And in the modern day, we humans like to think that we are now different, that we have changed into something much more open-minded, that we would never make someone suffer because they're different. But as this movie proposes, that's not necessarily the case.
And they're the product. They go in the vault, they stay there under lock and key.
Forever?
We can't have them strolling back out into the world, into my competitors' labs.
Right, we modern day humans wouldn't ever lock someone different up to suffer because we fear them. We would do it because we think we can make money off of them. As in, the point here is that if humanity does change, it's in appearance only. We do the same things just for different justifying reasons. We like to normalize difference, like having POC women in the army or whatever. But the truth is, when we come across something truly different that we genuinely do not understand, we don't like it and we ostracize it, purely on the basis that it's different. And that's the main thematic question this movie explores. That's what it's about. Going further, this unchanging humanity aspect also leads to the philosophical notion that being immortal, aka being different, it kinda sucks. All you wanna do is live a life like everyone else, but in this cruel reality, you just can't do that.
I got people that love me. People that are gonna worry.
They're going to lock you up.
We have the girl wanting to go to her family but being unable to do so because humans will find her there and capture her. We have Andy starting to lose her immortality altogether because at this point she's realized that no matter the good things she does, humans will never change and none of this serves a purpose. We have this guy betraying all of his friends purely in hopes of finding a cure to his immortality in order to die, because living forever is nothing but pain.
Everyone you love is gonna grow old. It's gonna suffer and it's gonna die. They will get to learn your secret. They will beg you to share it with them and you won't be able to. And they won't believe you, of course.
All in all, the main thematic proposal we're getting at is that if you are immortal, then you could never be truly alive. That you're just locked up in this metaphorical underwater coffin called life, destined to suffer forever. Pretty powerful stuff. Powerful especially considering that at the end the movie then concludes that this proposal isn't true, but instead just the incorrect anti-theme. The real truth of the theme, as we see, is the opposite.
She saved a family of refugees whose daughter would discover the technique for the early detection of diabetes. She saves a life. 2-3 generations later, we reap the benefits.
We don't get a say in when it ends. We never have. But we can control how we live. And to be honest, Buck, we've been doing a job of it. Now get up.
Andy finds a purpose once again when she realizes that humans have indeed started to change bit by bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if she gets her immortality back for the sequel because of that purpose as well. The girl realizes that even if you are wildly different from others, you can still live just fine. You just have to find others like you to normalize that difference. In other words, being immortal isn't a curse, it's a gift. And whether you personally like that message or not, the fact is that it is quite distinct and memorable. And also, most importantly, in this form, you can't find it in Taken, you can't find it in John Wick, you can't find it in Bourne or any Bourne copycat in existence. Only, or at least mostly only, in The Old Guard.